Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me, a great honor for me to introduce to you the former Prime Minister of Turkey, Ahmet Davutoglu, who is a man who's known in my profession as someone who is very interested in dialogue, in communication. He's always had his door open to visiting journalists and communicators and scholars. It is a time of national turmoil and international turmoil as well. So I think we can look forward this morning to a message from the former Turkish Prime Minister that will emphasize the theme that has been chosen for our conference this morning, hope. And as I said, it is my job now to get the rest of the show on the road and to let it glide toward a very graceful ending some 2 hours from now. You may think that sounds hopeful, but when we take on the size of the problems that face the area, it is only natural that we'll try to do that. So therefore, I turn the floor now over to the former Prime Minister of Turkey.
Thank you very much. Dear participants, excellencies, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the Qatari government and His Highness Emir and for hosting this conference, as well as, of course, to French and Qatari colleagues, and to IFRI, to our dear colleague Thierry, for this very timely meeting, where I see many familiar faces of my former colleagues to discuss a basic issue, global governance. In fact, in these days, everywhere in the world, not only in Doha or Paris, in all capitals, there are many meetings to understand how things are going and where are we leading. So this question today, especially the title, Global Governance, is important. And the question is clear: are we going towards a global governance or to evolve disorder? If you visit these capitals, you will see there is a source of concern everywhere. What will be the future of international system? What will be the future of EU? What will be the policy of the new American President, Donald Trump? And what will be the future of Middle East? If you ask me what is the key concept of all these sources of concern, I would say unpredictability. Today, unpredictability is everywhere. Nobody can see what will be happening forget next 10 years, even next year, 2017, which will be a year of election in Europe, and there will be many issues, including Syria. I would like to say very shortly, just to stimulate certain questions in our minds to discuss in future sessions. The question is, are we leading to a global governance? 19th century was a century of balance of power. 20th century was a century of international order after League of Nations and United Nations were established. And the hope in 1990s was that the future of international system will be global governance. The difference between global governance and international order is that international means based on nation states as the units, nations, and order is through the dialogues, relations between nations. While global governance is more interactive, more dialogue-based, more transnational, and in that sense, not only dialogue among nations, but dialogue as human beings, and interactive, interconnected system as international order. But unfortunately, after the Cold War, the hope, end of history, and many other new terminology like New World Order, global governance, now we are as if we are going back to balance of power rather than from international order to global governance, because every nation today in the capitals are talking more on their national interest, how to defend themselves against this unpredictability and insecurity in international system, rather than to talk on the values. Now what we have to look is, do we have a set of rules, a set of values, which, regardless of their religious, ethnic background, which are respected by all? Unfortunately, today it is difficult to say this. We know in the history, after 30 years war, we had Westphalian Conference. After Napoleonic Wars, we had Congress of Vienna. After First World War, we had League of Nations. After Second World War, we had United Nations. But what happened after Cold War, which was a global war? For example, let me give you one striking example about this unpredictability and absence of values. Today, as His Excellency, our dear colleague, Minister of Foreign Affairs of France, just mentioned about the situation in Aleppo. Yes, we may have different views on Aleppo, US, Russia, Turkey, Iran, Saudi Arabia, European Union, France. But at least we should agree on two principles, because these two principles are valid for everyone and the basis of international law. One is to act together against war crimes. Secondly, humanitarian access to everybody. Why don't we respect these two basic principles, even if we have differences of opinion on the future of Syria? Unfortunately, today there is no humanitarian access to Aleppo, and there is no respect to international law regarding war crimes. There is a collective punishment. And nobody raised this in international fora because everybody has different interest in this. We have three legs of this unpredictability and absence of global governance. One is psychological and politico-cultural, let me say, leg, which is spread of extremism and exclusivist policies. Terrorism, all we agree we have to fight against Daesh, ISIS, all type, and Boko Haram, Shabab, all type of terrorism. But at the same time, we have to act together against policies of exclusivist approach or exclusion. Everywhere now, there is a rise of Islamophobia, there is a rise of xenophobia, there is a rise of populist autocracies, which excludes others. So we have to have a common stand against terrorism everywhere, because it is a threat against us, as it has been mentioned in Paris. I was there shoulder to shoulder with the leaders of Europe and the world against terrorism in Paris, in Istanbul, in Brussels, in New York, everywhere. We have to be together. But at the same time, we have to defend inclusive policies everywhere against exclusivist approach. The political rhetoric during the campaign, electoral campaign in American presidential election, we were very worried about this psychology of exclusion. Also in Europe, the rise of right wings. So this unpredictability is a big threat which is leading to exclusivist policies. Famous Ibn Khaldun's approach to Asabiya. Everybody is going towards their own clan, tribe, isolationist approach. Second leg is economic crisis. We have to know that from 2008 until now, there is a huge economic crisis which was not seen before in the history of humankind. And despite of all common efforts, I attended several G20 meetings, common efforts and declarations. Today, we have a problem of recession, we have a problem of decline of productivity, we have a problem of rise of unemployment, which is leading to several crises, including Arab Spring. We should not forget that a Tunisian boy burned himself because of unemployment, and that started an Arab Spring. It may start new waves of reactions. The third leg is the inability or absence of dialogue of global players. Today, EU is talking not on global issues, but more on what will be the future of EU after Brexit. American public opinion is not talking on global affairs, more on what will be the policy of the new president. Russia following a very assertive foreign policy, but lack of economic, the economic crisis is there. China is observing the limits of economic growth. Regional powers in our region and in the Muslim world, they are talking more on national survival rather than regional common destiny. So, in short, my dear colleagues, we are facing a big problem of unpredictability and source of concern. Based on absence of global governance, absence of common understanding and rise of extremism, economic crisis, and inability and absence of dialogue among global players. What is the solution? In my conclusion, my suggestion is, solution is the key concept is inclusivity, and more dialogue, more sense of common destiny. We should not forget in 1930s, there was economic crisis, there was extremist policies, there was isolationist approach, there was rise of populist autocracies everywhere in Europe in 1930s, and the end was Second World War. We hope that the end of all this turmoil will not be going towards Third World War, but it depends on our efforts. Efforts of statesmen, efforts of research institutes like IFRI, or efforts of academicians and scholars and public opinion makers everywhere. Inclusivity is needed today. A new reform of UN based on inclusivity, a new economic system in the world of interdependence and inclusivity, a common understanding like civilizational dialogue everywhere to fight against extremist and isolationist, exclusivist policies, and a real, sincere dialogue among global players. I hope this forum today, World Policy Forum Conference, will be an asset for such a dialogue among us, and I hope the future will be a future of global governance rather than a future of balance of power based on selfish national interest rather than the common destiny of humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very challenging but extremely worthwhile agenda. And I think we can all go forward now to try to accomplish much of what you've laid out this morning. I'd like to invite the panelists for the first panel to come to the stage now. If you'd keep your seats, everybody else, we will be able to get this first introductory panel flowing. Our first discutant this morning will be Mr. Youssef Amrani, who is Senior Advisor to King Mohammed VI of Morocco. It's appropriate, I think, to begin with someone from the Maghreb to emphasize that we're looking at the greater Middle East and how what has happened in the Maghreb has led to a more general discussion about inclusion, about democratic principles, and about the future for the Middle East. Mr. Amrani.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim, for making the clarification, because when we talk about the Middle East, sometimes we forgot about the Maghreb, and the two regions are linked together. And I would say beyond, because today, due to the security threat in the region, also the Saharan Africa must be linked to the situation in the region. If we think about the high volatile current state of international affairs, the future of the Middle East may seem like an impossible question to address, but it needs an answer, and it must be, like the French Foreign Minister said, must be a collective one. We should work together in order to address all these kind of issues. Today, we have difficult and tough geopolitics. Brexit in Europe, the new election in the US, and the increasing challenges we have to face together. So I think today, and this is my first message, that we have undoubtedly reached a crossroad today. And we have to choose which kind of path, both as a region, but also as an international community. So I really thank IFRI to give us this opportunity to have a dialogue and to think about what we should do and which kind of ideas we'll put forward. I will take my 7 minutes, but before we talk about tomorrow, I think we have to tackle the bleak reality today in the region, and we have to come with some difficult truths. There is the urgent reality of violent conflict in Syria, Libya, Yemen, and so on. This is increasing the instability and creating humanitarian crisis in our region. Then, of course, Saeb is here, and he will talk about the Palestinian issue. But still, I think even if this question remains unresolved, and now today it has been relegated in the hierarchy of emergencies, I think from my point of view, and my country's point of view, doesn't make it less important. It is today at the heart of the grievance across the Arab world, and it is the cause also of many commonly feeds of frustration against the region. Another point which I want to put forward is the issue of governance, deficit of governance in our region, and the lack of development, and which created a lot of frustrations and difficulties. And in this connection, I want to put also forward here that the lack of effective global cooperation and regional cooperation combined with weak institutions have created a chaos in our region. And we need to address these issues. We need to work together. We need to address collectively all these issues, as Ahmed Davutoglu was saying, in order to face the challenge of poverty, of marginalism, extremism. And I want to tackle the issue of Daesh, but I think today it is a big threat. We need, as countries of the South, to do our own homework, not only to work on cooperation, on regional integration, but also to deconstruct the jihadist narrative. We have the instruments how to deconstruct narrative, because it is important to fight militarily, it's important to fight, to implement security measures, to fight the radicalism, the extremism, and Daesh, but we need today to work on the minds, on the alternative, and not only fight against this extremism, but also to present an alternative narrative. Because today, what we notice is Islam, as has been said by previous speakers, is hijacked by the extremists. So what do we need to do then? What kind of questions we have to ask ourselves? I think one issue is that, and Ahmed Davutoglu was saying, was a technical issue. There's a crisis in the Security Council, in the international community. Today, the international community was not able to find a solution for the ongoing crisis because of its division. French Foreign Minister was saying earlier that his resolution was vetoed on Syria by one country. In Morocco, when he was in Security Council 4 years ago, and Ambassador Lushki is here in the room, we have presented a resolution. At that time, it was easy to work on the Syrian path, but again, the resolution was vetoed. So I think what we need in order to move forward, we need to move forward and play our part as the region. I was saying earlier that we need to do our own homework, building coherent regional integration as a model to face these challenges. And in this perspective, I think we need also to establish a model of good governance. We have to do our own homework, whatever. We need to implement a global governance based, of course, on the respect of the specificities of each country. And we also to build up a foundation of a new economic order, where the citizen is a priority. And we need also, and this issue was not this morning tackled here, we need to address the issue of identity. And I spoke about how to fight terrorism with should be a strategy, inclusive strategy with all the actors, the religious leaders, the civil society, and so on. And if you have 2 or 3 minutes more, Jim, I would like to say and to maybe Miguel Ángel, my friend, what is here, we need to have our partners on board also. We need to do our homework, but we need to have our partners, and especially the European Union. And today, I think that, of course, we have listened with great attention the last communication of the European Union as far as foreign policy and defense, but we need a more, Miguel Ángel, ambitious policy towards the region from the European Union, especially in this time where there is, with the new American administration, we need Europe to be more in phase with ambitious instruments and with more political will to work together with this region. And now, let me briefly and conclude, saying that Morocco, thanks to the vision and the leadership of King Mohammed VI, didn't wait for the Arab Spring to make the changes in our region. We saw change as an opportunity to work together. And of course, the first was to implement a democratic model with the free elections, with the civil society participating. And this, I think, was important in our vision and to build up a democratic system. But we walked on our two legs. The democratic one through elections, strong institutions, but also the economic through the creation or to responding of the expectation of the young generation. I will finish by giving you these messages that today in this very difficult context, cooperation is needed at all levels to ensure a peaceful and stable future of the Middle East. We need to have cooperation domestically, with including business communities. It's important, because what is important is how much job do you create and how much growth do you achieve. It's important for the Middle East today. We need to work on resolving the ongoing conflicts. We need to work on building up democratic systems, but we need an economic good governance in order to respond to the expectation of the young generation and people. So these are, I think, my main messages. Morocco is, thanks to this vision, I said, we could share our model. We don't want to give, but we saw change as an opportunity to move forward.
Youssef, thank you very much for that. Let me pick up on exactly what you concluded with. You say that Morocco did not wait for the Arab Spring to make reforms. As you look around the Arab world today, what advice would you give to other Arab countries about proceeding now, at this moment, with reforms? What should they be doing? What can they be doing? And how can a country like Morocco encourage that development?
Thank you. I think that they should follow an inclusive approach. Try to have everybody at work and try to work on a different culture, a culture of compromise, listening to each other and try to compromise within democratic and each country according to its own specificity. We're not here to give any lessons, but we think that thanks to this vision and this approach, and we need the instruments. The instrument is transparency, good governance, elections, but also job creation. This is the only way how to work in order to share prosperity and to reach stability. Of course, resolving conflicts, military intervention, security are important, but without this human dimension, because the dignity is how to respond to the human needs of our population today in the Arab world.
Thank you. I'd like now to introduce Saeb Erekat, who I think just about everybody here already knows, so I won't take a lot of time to introduce him anymore. Saeb, please take the...
Thank you, Jim, and good morning, everyone. And thanks to the organizers, Qatari Foreign Minister and EFRI for this kind invitation. I think today Arab countries, as of 12 days ago, are asking themselves one question. They're trying to assess the impact of Trump's victory in the US elections. The impact on his election, on countries, on policies, Muslim Brotherhood, and Egypt, Syria. And at the same time, while Trump is forming his administration, I'm sure that his administration will be asking themselves the question of how would our elections impact on Arabs assessing and changing their situations. To both, I would say, we have 4 years of uncertainty. Uncertainty. The question that the Trump administration and the Arab leaders should ask themselves every morning is how to defeat ISIS. ISIS is 803 in Islamic history since my prophet, God bless him, died. As Muslims, we're supposed to go to mosques to worship God, not to use God. And the minute we go to mosques to use God, we always had bloodshed. And as Arabs, we have tens of thousands of universities, hundreds of thousands of intellectuals, writers, authors. We have acted cowardly in facing such threats in our own households and neighborhoods. And we need to assess the situation very carefully. And to you, Jim, in the US and in Europe, since you did not have developed the techniques to kill ideas with bullets, if you did, please tell me, inform me so I can change my thinking. Ideas cannot be killed with bullets, and ideas cannot be prevented to travel without visas. So today, what do we have, Mr. Hijab? We have in Damascus, Moscow, Washington, Paris, London, Berlin, and they're not in a picnic there. They know that something went down, that Sykes-Picot, and a new map is being formulated, whether we like it or not, as Arabs. To defeat ISIS, back to the question, 2 things are needed. Number 1 is to look at the real threat to us as Arabs today. It's demography. 55% of Arabs are less than 20 years of age. No Arab leader, no Arab thinker can compete with this thug called Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. This man is promising our desperate youth, unemployed, 70 virgins and castles in heaven and so on. And in Palestine, we have 26% unemployment rate. We cannot even promise a 1-bedroom apartment and a job. We cannot compete. So we need to revisit our educational systems, maybe from kindergarten. Why do we teach our children to die for Allah? Our Quran says we should teach our children how to live for Allah. We should revisit our education, our economies, our structures, accountability, transparency, women's rights, human rights, the rules of law, without waiting for you to tell us what to do or assessing the situation. Because what's going on in the Arab world, and mark my words very carefully, is exactly what Europe went through in March 15th, 1848, when Chancellor Metternich had to flee his palace after 3 weeks of peaceful demonstrations in Vienna. It took Europe a Bismarck, a Berlin Conference, a World I, a World II, and now Britain is leaving, not leaving. The dust has not settled down. Arabs are going through a major transformations today. It will take us, depending on what we do, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decades of bloodshed, and no one is immune. But the answers are very clear. The answers are very clear. The world has changed on us. Today, in each household in the Arab world, there are 6 to 7 chief editors. Our wives, our children, our grandchildren are on their Facebook and their Twitter. They're connecting worldwide. They're seeing everything. Our children and our youth and our students cannot see with the eyes of their rulers, listen through their ears, and speak through their tongues anymore. This must stop. The second thing that's needed here is peace between Palestinians and Israelis. And here, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It is a 2-state solution on the 1967 lines. State of Palestine to live side by side the State of Israel on the 1967 lines. We have recognized the State of Israel right to exist. But then we are confronted with an Israeli government today that its education minister is celebrating the victory for Trump by saying it marked a new era, the 2-state solution is over. If that's what they anticipate, I can ask you a question, Jim, and you need to answer it in Washington. What's the difference between a thug and a murderer who slit the throat of a Western journalist in Iraq and Syria under the name ISIS, and between a thug and a murderer who burns an 18-month toddler, Ali Dawabshe, with his mother, father, and brother simply because they're not Jewish. We are facing here a culture of thinking, a culture of hate, a culture of bigotry. So it's your choice to continue not defining relations with the Arabs, because personally speaking, I don't think that the West has defined its relation with the Arabs since the year 1683, when some Muslim soldiers sieged Vienna. We have never been forgiven for that. Saddam Hussein is a good dictator when he wages a crazy war against Iran, then he's a bad dictator when he occupies Kuwait. Assad is a good dictator when he fights with you in Hafr al-Batin, and then today he's a bad dictator, and so on. Gaddafi is Mother Teresa, and then we kill him. This must stop. A definition of Western-Arab relation is a must, and it's based on interests. It's based on the values of interest. See us. You don't see us any more than how you define your interests, and then you play games with our rulers on how to sustain themselves or not to sustain themselves. I believe that the French have grasped the idea. Yeah, and you know, as the Foreign Minister, Mr. Roy, said this morning, you know, about terrorism in Nice, in Paris, in Lyon, in Brussels. But you should keep in your mind, 99% of those who are fighting ISIS are Sunni Arab Muslims. And 99% of those who are being killed by ISIS are Sunni Arab Muslims. That is the truth. And the French found the balance between defeating ISIS and inviting for an international conference in Paris to solve the Palestinian-Israeli problem. And here, war is being waged against them by Netanyahu. The mere fact, if anyone mentions two states in 1967, he becomes the enemy of peace, stability, and he becomes related to bin Laden and so on in Netanyahu's dictionary. If we're going to weigh things in terms of Obama's administration by threats and opportunities, well, I think we're going to have to wait for a long, long time. Because how do we define threats and how do we define opportunities is another story. Trump's election is an earthquake. It's a major earthquake. It will change things. We have to watch very carefully the elections in Europe. We have to see the rise of the national extreme movements in Europe. This is very serious. I don't have time to go into the details of this, but all I have to do now is that understand very well that if we do not face the threats that are facing us, irrespective of the consequences of this, on that, on our relations with the Trump administration or not, as Arabs, we need to define what we want. And what we want is to have a better future based on peace, democracy, human rights, women's rights, accountability, transparency, and the rule of law. And if we don't help ourselves on this, nobody else can. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that very sobering statement, which is deserving of great attention, I think. There have been forces in Israel for a long time that have been against the two-state solution. More recently, it is Palestinian moderates who are saying there's no longer a hope for a two-state solution, and you danced on the edge of saying that. If there's no two-state solution, what is the alternative? What is the future?
Well, Jim, Israel is a country with 3,000 fighting planes, 5,000 tanks, nuclear weapons. If it's my word against theirs, in the Congress and the Senate, I stand dead. I don't stand a chance. And who said life is about fairness and justice? But having said all of this, Israel has three options. One is my option, and the only option is a two-state solution. Live and let live. Secondly, there are those in my people who are saying one-state solution. There is no thing as a one-state solution. A solution, by definition, requires two parties. Israel will never be a party to a one-state solution, democratic, secular state where Jews, Muslims, and Christians. We offered this 40, 50 years ago. The third option is what Netanyahu is trying to institutionalize now, is what I call one state, two systems. Apartheid. And this, nobody will have the stomach for it. I believe that I did not wake up one morning and felt my conscience aching for the suffering of Israelis, that I recognize them and I sit with them. And neither did they. This is a need. I can promise you, Jim, Jews, after 5,700 years, are not going to convert to Christianity and Islam and become Palestinians, and Palestinian Christians and Muslims will not convert to Judaism and become Israelis. Today, as I speak to you, from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean, 50.9% of the population are non-Jews. 49.1% are Jews. What are they going to do with me? So the only option is the two-state solution. So the Republican administration headed by President George W. Bush and Republicans headed by Obama have said both that two-state solution in 1967 is a national American interest. Let's translate this into reality and stop treating Israel as a country above the laws of man, and stop your dealing with the Arabs in the way of undefined relations. This is the combination for a future, stable Middle East.
Thank you very much, Saeb. We have an opportunity now to have something of an outside view on the conflict and on the future of the Middle East. And I refer to the special representative from China who's going to speak next. And of course, China has an increasing interest in Central Asia and in economic and political ties with the Middle East as well. If you could give us your view of the future, China's role and the role of other outside powers in the Middle East.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, everyone. During the past 30 years, I used to be work in the Middle East, especially Arabic country. I used to base in Cairo, Palestine, Jordan, and Turkey. So I have some experience that I could feel that the people feeling that in this region. Today, I just want to talk about a few points. First, about the region. That everybody talk about a lot of worries, problems, but as an outsider, a foreigner, I feel that I monitor that during the past 30 years, there's great change in this region. When I first worked in Cairo, I fly from Beijing to Karachi and Cairo. I have no choice but wait 10 days in Karachi for the flight to Cairo. There's no direct flight between Cairo and China. The feeling that I fly from Beijing to Karachi, I feel that I'm from a countryside to a city. Then at the flight from Karachi to Cairo, I feel that from countryside to a city. That Cairo, that is very, very beautiful, very modern city compared with Beijing at that time. All buildings and gray, all dress that people wear that blue, all green. But after 30 years, I found that there's a great change in China. Everybody knows that. And also that great change in the region. So when we talk about the problems and crisis that in Palestine, in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Libya, I feel very sorry about the people, about those that war, that killing, fighting. But in the same time, I shocked yesterday, since I came here, that in Doha, I found that there's a miracle. A desert city become a very modern city, even better, more beautiful than New York, Paris. So that I believe, strongly believe, this area, this region, have very bright future. Because they used to create very great history. I believe they also have the ability to create very bright future in the maybe next 10 years or that even longer, first. And secondly, I would like to introduce my work. Before I named as a special envoy for China to the Middle East, I used to be ambassador for China to Palestine. I spent very difficult time that in Gaza and in Ramallah. I was the last ambassador met with the former president, Mr. Arafat, before he passed away, that just 20 days. Then I worked in Jordan and Turkey. So during the past more than 10 years, I work in this region. I found that there's great changes. A lot of people talk about China's role, Chinese interest in this region. I think I should introduce the people about what our Chinese thinking. What is the interest in Chinese eye? We think that stability or development is Chinese interest in this region. We have no special interest other than this. We hope this region could be peaceful and stability, and there's development. So for this region, we try very hard to talk with everyone almost. Every country. During the past 2 years, I used to visit more than 40 countries. Almost every month, I would visit 1 or 2 or 3 countries and attend international conferences and meetings. So China's policy to the Middle East, I could see that we emphasize that first, we strongly believe, Middle East need a comprehensive solution. There's 2 points of that comprehensive solution. First, Palestinian issues, Iraqi, Syria, Yemen, Libya. Those 5 hotspots and crises should be considered together. International community should not emphasize just 1 or 2 this crisis or forget others, especially Palestinian issues. And secondly, when we talk about peace process, political dialogue, political solution, we should also consider that economic development and security and stability. So those issues should consider together. And the third one for Chinese policy, I think China, we have very good friends. We have very good relations with almost every country. So we have very good relations with almost every country, and also Israel. We hope that China could be a cooperator. We would like to cooperate with everyone. We hope we have very even better relations with every country, every side, and especially that everybody knows that in recent years, our president, initiative that One Belt, One Road, Silk Road. So I think this is very important, not just for China, and also for the region, for the world in the future. And the One Belt, One Road, that is not just an economic initiative, and also it has special political meanings. Because when we talk about those problems, we should not forget that development may be the most useful key for those problems. So China that would like to be more positive, more active, in the future in this region. Thank you.
Several of our speakers today have already referred to the great crisis surrounding the Syrian civil war. Our next speaker has been Foreign Minister of Syria, is now a leading figure in the opposition in Syria. I'd like to introduce Riad Hijab.
عفوا شكرا جزيلا سيد جيم. أنا لم أكن وزيرا للخارجية بل كنت رئيس وزراء سوريا. شكرا جزيلا للسادة المنظمين لهذا المؤتمر، وكل الشكر والتقدير لهم لدعوتنا للحضور والتحدث أيضا. وينعقد هذا المؤتمر في ظل تصعيد روسي إيراني في سوريا نتج عنه مقتل وإصابة مئات الآلاف من المدنيين وتهجير الملايين من السوريين ومئات الآلاف من المعتقلين والمغيبين قسريا وتدمير البنى التحتية وفرض التهجير القسري وانتشار أفكار التطرف والجماعات الإرهابية والميليشيات الطائفية العابرة للحدود. وتنعكس هذه الأحداث على الأمن الدولي، حيث تتنامى أزمة اللجوء في مختلف الدول الغربية ودول العالم، ويتزايد خطر تنظيم داعش الذي أصبح يمثل أحد أبرز مهددات الأمن العالمي، في حين يعاني الشعب السوري من الإحباط نتيجة فشل المجتمع الدولي في وقف الانتهاكات التي ترتكب بحقه من قبل الدكتاتورية المتداعية التي يشكل بقاءها تهديداً لمنظومات الأمن العالمي. ويأتي ذلك التصعيد الذي يشنه النظام وحلفائه الروس والإيرانيون في سوريا في ظل تحولات مفصلية على شتى الصعد الإقليمية والدولية، حيث جاء إعلان واشنطن وقف مفاوضاتها واتفاقها مع موسكو، إدراكاً منها أن الروس ماضون في تكرار السيناريو الأوكراني بسوريا، وفي ظل تشكل إدارة أمريكية جديدة وفوز الرئيس ترامب بالتأكيد سيكون هناك مشهد مختلف في التعامل مع الملف السوري عن إدارة أوباما. ومثلت التحركات الأوروبية والإقليمية الأخيرة في مجلس الأمن الدولي وجهودها في مجال إدانة روسيا ومحاسبة النظام تحولاً مهماً في مسار الأزمة السورية، خاصة بعد تلويح الاتحاد الأوروبي بإمكانية فرض عقوبات على روسيا إذا استمرت في تصعيدها بحلب. ولا شك في أن النتائج المتوقعة لعملية درع الفرات التركية سيكون لها أثر كبير في تغيير الواقع على الأرض، خاصة فيما يتعلق بفرض مناطق حظر الطيران وتوفير ملاذات آمنة للمدنيين، كما يتوقع أن يكون لتولي الأمين العام الجديد للأمم المتحدة أثر في اطلاع مجلس الأمن الدولي بدور أكثر فاعلية للخروج من حالة الشلل التي أصابت مجلس الأمن نتيجة الفيتو المتكرر، الفيتو الروسي، فضلاً عن التفاعلات المتوقعة للمعارك ضد تنظيم الدولة في الموصل وتأثيراتها المحتملة على الشرق السوري الذي تتأهب فيه جميع القوى الفاعلة لشن عملية رديفة ضد التنظيم وخاصة في رقة. والحقيقة التي يجب تأكيدها في هذا الإطار هي أن معركة الشعب السوري لم تعد تقتصر على مواجهة النظام بشار الأسد الذي يصر رموزه على البقاء في الحكم رغم فقدانهم الشرعية والسيادة والسيطرة على الأرض، بل تكمن في تحول الصراع إلى معركة وجودية يناضل فيها السوريون للحفاظ على وحدة بلادهم واستعادة سيادة الدولة وصيانة مؤسساتها من التدخلات الخارجية التي حولت معركة التحرر في سوريا إلى معركة إقليمية يزج من خلالها بعشرات الميليشيات الإرهابية الطائفية وجماعات المرتزقة من مختلف البلدان لتأجيج معركة طائفية تهدد الشرق الأوسط برمته. وفي ظل تعدد المشهد القتالي في الأزمة السورية لا بد من التأكيد على أنه لا يمكن التعامل مع تدهور الأوضاع الأمنية والإنسانية في بلادنا بمعزل عن المعادلة الأمنية في الشرق الأوسط، والتي تتسم بوجود تداخل كبير بين مفهومي الأمن الإقليمي والأمن الدولي. ومن غير الممكن للسوريين أن يخوضوا معركة التحرر من النظم الشمولية ومن الفكر المتطرف منفردين، بل لابد للمجتمع الدولي أن يطلع بدوره في المساعدة على إقصاء المؤثرات الخارجية التي تفاقم معاناتهم، وخاصة منها الدول التي تقاتل علناً إلى جانب النظام وتسهم في ارتكاب المزيد من الجرائم والانتهاكات بحق الشعب السوري على مرأى العالم ومسمعه. أيتها السيدات، أيها السادة، إن المعارضة السورية تشكل جزءاً من المعركة العالمية ضد الإرهاب، وتخوض اليوم معارك طاحنة ضد هذه التشكيلات التي اتخذت من بيئة الكراهية والاحتقان الطائفي والتهجير القسري والقتل الجماعي محضناً لتجنيد الشباب والدفع بهم في أتون محرقة القرن ال21. ولا يمكن كسب هذه المعركة من خلال الاقتصار على عمليات القصف الجوي لبعض المناطق التي يتم تحديدها عبر الأقمار الصناعية. فالحرب ضد الإرهاب هي معركة شاملة نخوضها من خلال برامج شاملة عكفنا منذ تأسيس الهيئة العليا للمفاوضات على إعدادها، وتشمل المواجهة الفكرية إلى جانب المواجهة العسكرية، والقضاء على الحواضن الفكرية والتنظيمية التي تغذي التطرف والطائفية والاستبداد، والمواجهة المجتمعية التي تتطلب إبعاد الشباب عن تلك البيئة الحاضنة للفكر المتطرف، ومن خلال توفير المناطق الآمنة للمدنيين وإعادة اللاجئين والنازحين، وتبني برامج لنزع التطرف وتحقيق المصالحة الوطنية وردع النزعات الانتقامية وصيانة حقوق المواطنين ضمن إطار الهوية الوطنية الجامعة والوطن الواحد، فضلاً عن المواجهة الاقتصادية التي تتطلب تدشين مشاريع إعادة الإعمار واستعادة البنى التحتية وتوفير الخدمات الأساسية لجميع المواطنين دون أي تمييز أو مفاضلة. ولا شك في أن استعادة الأمن وصيانة مؤسسات الدولة وتمتين أواصر اللحمة الوطنية في سوريا سيكون له أثراً كبيراً في تعزيز الأمن الإقليمي والأمن الدولي على حد سواء. ولتحقيق ذلك فإن الهيئة العليا للمفاوضات دشنت في شهر سبتمبر أيلول الماضي رؤيتها للمرحلة الانتقالية وفق بيان جنيف لعام 2012 والقرارات الأممية ذات الصلة، والتي تهدف إلى إنشاء نظام تعددي يرتكز على مبدأ المواطنة وحقوق الإنسان والشفافية والمساءلة وسيادة القانون، ويؤكد الحياد السياسي للجيش والقوات المسلحة ويحول الأجهزة الأمنية إلى مؤسسات احترافية تصون سيادة الدولة واستقلالها وتحمي الحريات العامة. وتضمنت رؤية الهيئة إنشاء هيئة حكم انتقالي تتمتع بكافة الصلاحيات التنفيذية لا مكان فيها لمن ارتكب جرائم بحق الشعب السوري وعلى رأسهم بشار الأسد، والمحافظة على وحدة الأراضي السورية وصيانة مؤسسات الدولة وضمان استمرار عمل الوزارات والهيئات الخدمية والعامة في الدولة. وحرصنا على أن لا تكون هذه الرؤية مقتصرة على الهيئة أو بعض مكوناتها فحسب، بل بذلنا جهدنا في تمثيل تطلعات الشعب السوري، وذلك من خلال الدعوة إلى إطلاق حوار وطني شامل وإجراء مراجعة دستورية وإجراء انتخابات تشريعية ورئاسية تؤذن بانتهاء المرحلة الانتقالية وقرار دستور دائم للبلاد. والانطلاق عملية تفاوضية ناجحة يتعين على الأمم المتحدة طرح رؤية جديدة يتم من خلالها استدراك أخطاء الجولات الثلاث الماضية، وذلك من خلال توفير البيئة المناسبة لتنفيذ القرارات الدولية وخاصة البنود الإنسانية ووقف إطلاق النار ورفع الحصار عن المدن والبلدات المحاصرة وإطلاق سراح المعتقلين، بالإضافة إلى تبني أجندة انتقال سياسي حقيقي تلتزم بالقرارات الدولية وخاصة بيان جنيف لعام 2012 وفرض جدول زمني واضح للتوصل إلى اتفاق سياسي. المسألة السورية لم تعد تعني السوريين فقط، بل الآن تعني العالم أجمع، فلا بد من التأكيد في هذا المجال على أن المعركة في أصلها هي صراع بين التحضر والديمقراطية من جهة وبين قوى التطرف والاستبداد والهمجية من جهة أخرى، وهي معركة لا يسوغ فيها مهادنة الخصم أو محاولة التواصل أو التوصل معه إلى أنصاف الحلول. وقد ثبت للدول الغربية خطأ التراخي مع القوى النازية والفاشية فيما يتعلق ببولندا وتشيكوسلوفاكيا والبلقان في عام 1939، حيث كلف ذلك الخطأ ملايين الأرواح في حرب عالمية مدمرة لم تشهد لها البشرية مثيل. وفي سوريا وأوكرانيا وغيرها من البؤر المشتعلة تقف دول التحالف نفسها في تحد حضاري لحماية الحرية والديمقراطية ضد محور يجمع قوى الاستبداد والديكتاتورية وجماعات التطرف والراديكالية في تحالف يتطلب سياسة حزم شبيهة بمبدأ إيزنهاور لمنع عقد قوى الاعتدال والديمقراطية من الانفراط أمام المد الشمولي. رغم كل التحديات الصعبة فإننا ماضون في جهودنا لتحقيق تطلعات الشعب السوري كافة، إيمانا منا بأن الشعب السوري قادر على النهوض ببلده من جديد، حيث تطلع الهيئة بدورها في صيانة وحدة البلاد واستعادة مؤسسات الدولة من مشاريع التوسع الخارجية والعمل على وضع وثائق مرجعية للمرحلة الانتقالية، وهي عملية تأسيس شاقة نخوضها يداً بيد مع جميع السوريين الذين قدموا تضحيات كبيرة للانعتاق من الدكتاتورية ونبذ إيديولوجيات التطرف والكراهية ونيل الحرية والاستقلال. وشكراً.
I think I had to ask you to clarify one point, and that is simply you referred to the Washington-Moscow deal on Syria. Can you tell us exactly what you mean and what your understanding is of whether something like that will continue to exist under President Trump?
الحقيقة أنا ذكرت أنه هذا الاتفاق وأوقفت المفاوضات ما بين روسيا والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية نتيجة الموقف الروسي المتعنت والغير مستجيب لكل القرارات الدولية وكل الاتفاقات. والجانب الروسي الآن يقوم بحرب مدمرة وحرب إبادة هم والجانب الإيراني ضد الشعب السوري وضد المناطق الآهلة بالسكان. أنا بالنسبة للإدارة الحالية الحقيقة كانت إدارة مرتبكة مترددة في اتخاذ موقف واضح تجاه قضية الشعب السوري، مع العلم أنه رئيس أوباما ذكر منذ السنة الأولى للانتفاضة الشعب السوري وثورة الشعب السوري بأنه بشار الأسد فقد شرعيته، وأنه بشار الأسد ارتكب جرائم بحق الشعب السوري. ولكن للأسف هذه الإدارة الأمريكية لم تتخذ الخطوات اللازمة من أجل إنهاء هذه المعاناة وهذه المأساة بالنسبة للشعب السوري. الرئيس أوباما وضع الخطوط الحمراء في حال استخدم النظام السوري المواد أو الأسلحة الكيميائية، وقتل النظام السوري الآلاف وعشرات الآلاف بالأسلحة الكيميائية نتيجة استخدامها المتكرر، وكذلك بالغازات السامة والبراميل المتفجرة وغيرها. وإلى الآن قبل أن آتي وأنا موجود هنا بينكم الشعب السوري يعاني من القتل والقصف من خلال الطائرات، النظام السوري والطائرات الروسية والميليشيات الطائفية والحرس الثوري الإيراني وغيرها. ولكن للأسف الشديد هذه الإدارة لم تتخذ ما هو مطلوب منها. وكذلك أيضا هذا لا يشمل فقط الإدارة الأمريكية، وإنما يشمل كل الدول المعنية، وخاصة دول دائمة العضوية في مجلس الأمن الدولي. هناك فيتو متكرر من الجانب الروسي يتخذ، 5 مرات تم اتخاذ الفيتو في مجلس الأمن الدولي وتعطيل مجلس الأمن الدولي. نحن نتمنى من الإدارة الأمريكية القادمة أن تكون جادة في إنهاء مأساة الشعب السوري، وتكون جادة في موضوع الانتقال السياسي وتحقيق الانتقال السياسي الحقيقي الذي ينهي حكم هذه العصابة المجرمة التي أوغلت بدماء الشعب السوري وتهدد الأمن في المنطقة الشرق الأوسط والأمن العالمي.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a good moment then to turn to an international expert on international negotiations and agreements, the former Foreign Minister of Spain, Miguel Ángel Moratinos.
Well, good morning. Thanks for the organizer to invite me, my friend Trinidad Montreal, and thanks to the Qatari authorities. I'm always very happy to be back at my second home, Qatar. I've been living here, and so it's always a pleasure to see all friends and colleagues. I will start with an obvious comment that we had been saying this morning in all the speeches from the Prime Minister of Qatar, from the Foreign Minister of France, for my friend Saeb and Youssef Amrani. Everybody has underlined that we live in a new world. The problem is that we all know that we live in a new world, but we don't really behave with these new challenges of the new world. Let me recall all of you. I recall my own experience. The 31st of December, mid-1999, we were on the eve of the new millennium. I think all of us have a good dinner, a good drink, even we dance. We were waiting for the new millennium. And the next morning, we wake up with some hangover, and then we put our ties, and then we go as business as usual. We thought that nothing has changed. And I remember Itamar and Saeb, in this new millennium, we thought we are going to have peace between Israel and Palestinians. We have a Clinton administration, we have the best condition, even Hafez al-Assad was practically convinced to make peace in Syria and Palestine. It didn't happen. And then 9/11 came, and all security challenge collapsed. The Twin Towers collapsed, and we were concerned, and the Bush administration, from my point of view, wanted an extremely strategic mistake. And then we continue as nothing has happened. And then we have to wait for the September 2007, Lehman Brothers collapsed, the whole financial system collapsed, and we didn't change. And then the paradox is that 11/9, no 9/11. The U.S. President of the U.S. America is Donald Trump. So I hope 9/11, 11/9, we should be aware that we are living in a different world, that we are living in a new world. And that reflects absolutely to the Middle East. Middle East, the epicenter of all agenda of diplomacy, new agenda of diplomacy, global terror, war and peace, conflict, refugees, etc. So we are prepared for this, or we are not prepared. We want to change, we want to address the issue, or we are not. Three main questions. Syria, I don't want to elaborate. The Prime Minister has already mentioned everybody. Ceasefire, end of violence, end of war. And we'll try to make it the sooner the better. Let's go to my personal, and I will say professional living, that is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Well, next year, 2017, is a special year. You know, diplomat, politician likes to have some kind of reference, historical reference. Well, next year, in November next year, there will concentration on certain historical events related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The 2nd of November, Balfour Declaration, the Jewish home, 100 years ago. The 29th of November, in UN, there was the 181 General Assembly resolution about that partition to create a Jewish state, an Arab state, and some international areas. 70 years ago. The 22nd of November, 1967, after the Six-Day War, it was Resolution of Security Council 242, the occupation areas. Well, let's try to understand what happened in these 100 years ago, how we can and we should try to solve this lasting conflict. Because without resolving the Palestinian-Israeli issue, even if we want to defeat Daesh, if we want really to make peace with Syria internally, regionally speaking, instability in the Middle East will continue. For that reason, we should be prepared. We don't know what the U.S. new administration are going to do. We have heard in campaign, candidate Trump in AIPAC meeting audience making quite a extraordinary and quite a worrying announcement. Well, it was a special gathering. I don't know if they will move to Jerusalem, the U.S. Embassy. I don't know if they are going to maintain a different policy towards the Palestinians. My question is that, of course, we have to be prepared. We don't know. Unexpectability, we are saying, is uncertain, we don't know. But once for all, why the Arabs and Europeans, we don't have a plan A and plan B in case something goes wrong? Why we have to wait for Godot to try to solve all the issue? Why we cannot, the Palestinians, the Arabs, the Europeans, can offer to Israel a plan, like a peace initiative with a European-French initiative to be together and try to solve the problem and try to put the Israeli government into the negotiation process? So my message is not to wait for what Mr. Trump is going to do, is to prepare ourselves. So Youssef Amrani was saying, what Europe should be do? Well, Europe have not to just wait for any action from U.S. administration. No, we should lead. And I think the French foreign minister was quite wise to say that he will continue to lead in this initiative. So that is my plea. Finally, if we succeed in the Syrian and the Palestinian, we have to look for the future of the region. And at that I finish. I think we all know that side-speak war is over. We don't know. We know that we have to reshape from the security point of view, and the Chinese friends say we need stability in the region. Okay, we need stability. How we are going to guarantee stability? So why you don't take the example of European affairs and European security, and we in 1975 have a Helsinki Act. Well, we are here in Doha, my dear friend. I address to the Qatari friends. Why you don't really have the courage to call for a Doha Act, like Helsinki Act, to have a comprehensive collective security system for the whole region? It's a paradox that in the Middle East there is not a own collective security system. You are behind the American security system, or you are under Iranian threat. Why you don't really move forward and you try to invite everybody around the same table? Israel, Iran, everybody, all Arab, European, Chinese, Japanese, everybody who have certain things to do in order that we can create a multilateral framework that can guarantee peace and security and cooperation for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very challenging ending. As you move around Washington over the last year or two to talk to people about the Middle East, you increasingly hear citations about a respected research organization, the Gulf Research Center, which is coming to have much more of a sharper profile, I think, in world capitals. We have with us the head of that organization, Abdulaziz Othman bin Sager. Please enlighten us.
Thank you, Jim. I'd like to start by thanking the Qatar Foreign Ministry, of course, and the IFRI for organizing such a forum. I was asked to speak a little bit about the Arab Spring and why, and what lessons did we learn from that one, and so allowed me to speak in Arabic, and those whom they would like to have a translation unit, please feel free. الربيع العربي كان يمثل حالة من الهياج الشعبي العفوي غير المنظم ضد الأوضاع القائمة ومحاولة حقيقية لتغيير سلبيات تراكمت عبر عقود زمنية طويلة، حيث خرجت الحشود العربية في دول الربيع العربي في حالة من الغضب والاحتقان أشعلها إضرام النار في نفسه الشاب التونسي طارق محمد البوعزيزي يوم الجمعة 17 ديسمبر من عام 2010 مقر في ولاية سيدي بوزيد، احتجاجاً على مصادرة السلطات البلدية لعربة كان يبيع عليها الخضار والفواكه لكسب رزقه وللتنديد برفض سلطات المحافظة. ثم امتدت شرارة الثورات العربية إلى بقية عواصم دول الربيع العربي، فكانت الثورة المصرية في 25 يناير من عام 2011 وكان القاسم المشترك بين الحشود العربية في هذه الثورات ما يلي: ترهل حكومات هذه الدول بسبب طول فترة بقاء الحكام في السلطة مع وجود النظام الجمهوري الهجين، الجمهوريات الوراثية، ضعف الاقتصاد وهبوط معدلات التنمية ومستوى الرفاهية وزيادة معدلات التضخم وتدني مستوى الرواتب وانتشار البطالة وتفاقمها، انتشار الفساد والمحسوبية والرشوة وعدم تكافؤ الفرص، غياب الديمقراطية والاعتماد على الحلول الأمنية واتباع سياسة الحلول الجزئية والترقيعية للمشاكل المستعصية في هذه الدول. واليوم وبعد مرور ما يقارب من 6 سنوات على انطلاق الربيع العربي، من الممكن القول أن هذا الربيع لم يحقق إلا اليسير أو القليل من أهدافه. في الوقت نفسه نتجت عن أحداث الربيع العربي وضعاً معقداً في أغلب أجزاء العالم العربي، وخلقت مشاكل وتحديات هائلة تهدد الأمن القومي العربي برمته، وتهدد الاستقرار والأمن الداخلي والإقليمي، وتشكل تهديداً مباشراً لاستقلالية عدد من الدول العربية ووحدة أراضيها وكيانها السياسي. والسؤال هنا على من يفعل ماذا ومتى؟ على الأنظمة والحكومات أن تبحث أسباب ثورات الربيع العربي وتضع سياسات جديدة على ضوء احتياجات الشعوب في الحاضر والمستقبل. عليها أن تدرس دراسة المتغيرات الداخلية واحتياجات الأجيال الشابة وطريقة تفكيرها وكيف يمكن التعامل معها وتوجيهها والتأثير عليها والاستفادة منها وتحويلها إلى قوى إيجابية. اهتمام الحكومات والمراكز البحثية ومنظمات المجتمع المدني بدراسة تأثير قضايا المنطقة على الرأي العام العربي لدى الأجيال الشابة وكونها من محفزات الثورات. تحديد المخاطر والتحديات التي تواجه المنطقة العربية من دول الإقليم ومن القوى الكبرى وتأثير هذه التحديات على استقرار الدول العربية. بحث دور وسائل الإعلام وشبكات التواصل الاجتماعي والإعلام الجديد في التأثير على الشباب وعلى الرأي العربي الداخلي وتحريكه، مع ضرورة اطلاع وسائل الإعلام والجامعات والمدارس والعلماء بنشر الفكر الصحيح العميق وليس التسطيح والإلهاء، مع وضع تصور عربي لمستقبل الإعلام على أن يكون هنالك ميثاق شرف عربي إعلامي عربي تحت مظلة جامعة الدول العربية. تفعيل اجتماعات وزراء الإعلام مع وضع رؤية غير تقليدية لهذه الاجتماعات وفقاً لدراسات وأبحاث علمية صحيحة. العمل على إيجاد حلاً ناجعاً لمواجهة مشكلة الإرهاب من خلال التعاون الإقليمي والعربي والدولي على أن يتم بحث أسبابه وطرق ووسائل تمويله والدول والجهات الداعمة لهذه الظاهرة التي تستهدف جميع الدول دون استثناء. التكامل الاقتصادي العربي ضرورة لزيادة النمو وتوفير الفرص العمل ومن ثم تثبيت الاستقرار والأمن. العمل على إيجاد فرص عمل جيدة للشباب والخريجين لتفعيل أسباب الاحتقان والفراغ لدى الشباب. المصارحة العربية في تحديد التعامل العملي والسري مع جماعات الإسلام السياسي وتصنيف هذه الجماعات والفصل بين العمل الدعوي والعمل السياسي ومحاولات القفز إلى الحكم على ضوء نتائج أو مخرجات ثورات الربيع العربي. وهنا يتبادر إلى الذهن سؤال: هل يمكن تحقيق الفوائد التي لم يتمكن الربيع العربي من تحقيقها؟ المشكلة حالياً لا تكمن في تحقيق الفوائد، بل تكمن في معالجة التهديدات والتحديات التي أفرزها ظاهرة الربيع العربي والمحافظة على الحد الأدنى من الأمن والاستقرار للمواطن العربي. فلا يمكن تحقيق أهداف الربيع في ظل الوضع الأمني والسياسي القائم الذي يعد تهديداً وجودياً للأمة العربية بكاملها. فعلينا أولاً التعامل بشكل جدي مع التهديدات الخطيرة التي تحيط بالأمة العربية قبل التفكير في الإصلاحات الجذرية وتحديد ومحاسبة المخطئين والفاسدين وغيرها من المثل الإنسانية التي يتطلبها المجتمع المتقدم الذي سعى الربيع العربي لإرساء قواعده. أما السلبيات التي أفرزها أحداث الربيع العربي فهي استغلال البعد الديني والطائفي لتحقيق أهداف سياسية غير مشروعة، واختطاف ثورة الشعب العفوية ضد الظلم من قبل مجموعات دينية أو طائفية بعيدة عن الانتماء الوطني أو القومي. ظهور حرب أهلية وصراعات مسلحة وتعاظم دور الجماعات الإرهابية والميليشيا المسلحة المرتبطة بمصالح خارجية والتي تهدد كيان الدولة وتعمق دور اللاعبين من غير الدولة على حساب اضمحلال سلطة وهيبة الدولة التقليدية. أطماع وتدخلات خارجية استباحت أراضي الدول العربية وسيادتها واستغلت فوضى الربيع العربي والصراعات التي تطورت عبرها لتبني سياسة تدخلية واسعة النطاق تحت شعار محاربة الإرهاب أو حماية أمن الدولة الوطنية. أو مساعدة وحماية الأقليات وغيرها من الشعارات التي تبرر ارتكاب أعمال العدوان على الدول العربية واستماح حرمات المواطن العربي. انتشار الفساد وسرقة الأموال وثروات البلاد إضافة إلى سرقة التراث الحضاري والتاريخي للأمة العربية، تدهور الأوضاع الاقتصادية لدول الربيع العربي خاصة وللمنطقة العربية بصفة عامة، حيث ذكرت اللجنة الاقتصادية والاجتماعية لغرب آسيا الإسكوا التابعة للأمم المتحدة أن الاحتجاجات التي شهدتها أحداث الربيع العربي كبدت المنطقة خسائر بلغت قيمتها 614 مليار دولار منذ عام 2011، وأن حجم الضرر في البنى التحتية للدول المنكوبة بلغ ما يعادل 461 مليار دولار، فيما بلغت خسائر أسواق الأسهم والاستثمارات 35 مليار دولار، بينما خسرت الأسواق المالية 18 مليار دولار، وتقلص الاستثمار الأجنبي المباشر بمعدل 16 مليار. بدأ العمل على إعادة ترتيب ولاءات المواطن العربي وهويته وانتماءاته، وأهمها محاولة قتل الهوية والانتماء الوطني ونزع الهوية والانتماء القومي العربي وإحلال الانتماء الطائفي. المواقف السلبية للمجتمع الدولي والدول الكبرى من التطورات في المنطقة، فالموقف الأمريكي وتذبذب السياسة الأمريكية في المنطقة يشكل تهديداً لاستقرار دول المنطقة، والتدخل العسكري الروسي في سوريا يعد تهديداً متنامياً لجميع دول المنطقة. في الوقت نفسه هنالك غياب كبير لدور الأمم المتحدة وغياب مماثل لدور دول الاتحاد الأوروبي. لذا فإن التوجه في المرحلة الحالية يجب أن يركز على المحافظة على وجود الأمة العربية وتثبيت أمنها واستقرارها أولاً، قبل البحث في وسائل الإصلاح والتطوير وتحقيق أحلام الربيع العربي المشروعة التي يجب أن تكون نابعة وتالية مباشرة للاستقرار، حتى لا تسقط هذه الدول في مستنقع التفكيك والتقسيم والحروب الأهلية والدمار الاقتصادي والاجتماعي. أي يجب المحافظة على حياة الأم حتى يعيش الجنين. وشكرا.
Thank you for that very broad-gauged analysis. Just to make sure that I understand 2 points.
Yes, sir.
Essentially, you see both the spread of social media in the Arab world and the Arab Spring itself as a net negative for the Arab world. Is that right?
Well, I'm seeing the social media was a tool have been used on the Arab Spring. But at the same time, I don't look at it as the Arab Spring as a total negative. I think because of the various reasons that have associated with the Arab Spring, today I'm sure people are asking what is the cost-benefit of the Arab Spring. I'm not saying that Saddam was a better choice or Gaddafi was a better choice or Assad is a better choice or no. But I think the whole process of the Arab Spring today, when people weigh the profit and loss, how much it did cost us in terms of infrastructure, how much it did cost the whole region to way back. I think that's what I'm looking from this angle, and not only saying what I'm suggesting that, yes, today we need to have a better Arab unity. We need a better, working together. We need to address many of those issues in terms of democracy, youth, job issues. We need to look at media and the impact of that one. We need to look at the role of the external actors into the region. I talked about the U.S. Foreign policy and how bad it was for the region.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is a particular pleasure to welcome to Doha Itamar Rabinovich, an old friend, a diplomat and scholar extraordinaire, and an author of a forthcoming biography of Yitzhak Rabin that I think many of us will want to read. Itamar, as you walk us through your thoughts on the future of the Middle East, perhaps you could tell us if you've heard anything here this morning that has made you more hopeful.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim, for this kind introduction, and thank you to our Qatari and French hosts. and thank you to my colleagues on the panel for having made a variety of so many interesting comments and insights. The only advantage of being the last speaker in a large panel is that you may have some perspective on everything that has been said. And I'd like to say that looking, let's say, the next 10 years or so and trying to integrate what you have heard, we are talking about 4 levels of analysis. A point was made by my Saudi colleague and in a very powerful way by Saeb Erekat, the infrastructure. This is a region that now has almost 500 million inhabitants. Egypt now is a country of 91 million, and soon enough will be a country of 100 million that it cannot feed. If these issues of production, the relationship between population, demography, and resources, the need to develop industry and sources of occupation for this very young population will not be resolved in the next few years, nothing is going to be stable. I mean, every political structure will then be standing on a house of cards. So one major effort needs to be made in that regard. And there is no objective reason that the Middle East will not undergo changes similar to what Asia, East and Southeast Asia underwent in previous decades. There's nothing that should hinder that. The second level is the level of the state. What we are witnessing now is a collapse of a large number of states. At least 6 or 7 states in the region meet the classic definition of failed state. Unfortunately, Syria is the worst case, but Iraq, Yemen, Somalia, Sudan, Lebanon, so forth, meet that definition, and therefore a second challenge is to build durable states, durable frameworks for people to live in and to conduct their collective life in the coming years. The third is the issue of a regional order. The Middle East is a region. It's not just a piece of geography on the globe. It is a region, and there are patterns for conducting the relationship among the countries, the members of that region. And part of the current crisis and problem in the Middle East that there is right now no pattern. There's not the Arab League is not functional. You have the Saudi-Iranian rift, the Shiite-Sunni rift, the continuing Arab-Israeli conflict, the Syrian crisis, which is a cockpit of regional rivalries, and so on and so on. Very important is the fact that the Middle East has been joined by 2 very large and powerful actors in recent decades, by Turkey and Iran. Iran and Turkey, during much of the 20th century, were not part of the Middle Eastern system. They now are in a full way. And their integration has not been done, not by themselves and not by the others. So there has to be a quest. Miguel Moratinos spoke about the way Europe tried to do that quite successfully. The Middle East needs to go through such a process, both in large, broader way, and in particular issues. Of course, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been mentioned here by several speakers, including the prime ministers. Saeb and I share the ultimate line, that is to say, a 2-state solution. We both believe in a two-state solution. We both worked for it. This is not a great time for the 2-state solution, for developments that happen in our both parties and also internationally. So, but obviously, this needs to happen. It's the only way to resolve that issue. The international. The Middle East was governed for decades by the Cold War. There was, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, a period of American ascendancy. There now is a renewed competition. And now with Trump's election, there is talk about potentially a rapprochement between Putin's administration and Trump's administration. Maybe yes, maybe not. What we hear from, what we heard from candidate Trump and what we see by the names of candidates for key positions in foreign and national security policy does not send a single and a clear message, and there are contradictions built into this. If President-elect Trump is very anti-Iranian, but is friendlier with Mr. Putin, how do you reconcile that to issues? Very difficult to reconcile. We'll have to see how that works out. And of course, all these four levels need to be integrated in a comprehensive way. Otherwise, there is no clear path for us to follow. Finally, a word about the very term Middle East that I think will give us an interesting insight. The Middle East is the only part of the world that is defined geographically from the outside. We speak about Latin America, we speak about Africa, we speak about Southeast Asia. They are all absolute terms. The Middle East is a relative term. It's the Middle East because seen from Europe, there is the Far East and there is the Middle East. So the Middle East refers to itself in a term that reflects an external view, not an internal view. And it's time for people in the Middle East to change that and to start looking at themselves, at the region, and act by themselves, because salvation will not come from the outside. The outside can be helpful, needs to be used, but it's up to the people of the region to take the fate in their hands and try to make the next decade better than this decade.
Itamar, thank you. It was reassuring to hear you reinforce the idea of the two-state solution is still possible and achievable. What needs to be done now to make it plausible as a solution?
I think the single most important act needs to come from President-elect Trump. We've seen contradictory signals. Names have been mentioned for key positions that are actually hostile to this idea. He himself spoke twice, early in the campaign and then in his Wall Street Journal, about his willingness to resolve this issue. He said this is the ultimate deal that he can make. Of course, if he throws his weight into that, that could be a shot in the arm to a process that has seemed to be moribund for too many years. So if you ask me for the one important message, it needs to come from Donald Trump.
Thank you. Before we turn to the audience for questions for a brief Q&A session, I wanted to ask the panel whether you have any questions, very briefly, for each other. Any comment particularly on something you've heard today, or a question for somebody else? And I see one hand here already.
Thank you, Jim. I think today we have raised very important questions. We are dealing with the future of the Middle East. I want to say 2 points. We should not have in mind to reshape the Middle East by creating new entities. It was in the back. We need strong states. We don't need fragile states in the region. To be able to build up a new Middle East with shared prosperity, good governance, democracy, we need strong states. 3, we need to solve the ongoing conflicts on a certain basis. And the basis is compromise, spirit of compromise, negotiation, political solution, but also, and more essentially, the respect of the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of state. This is essential because some ideas were put forward about reshaping some Middle East. This is impossible because fragile states will only create vacuum, and vacuum benefits for the extremists. It's what's happening in the region. We were not able 4 or 5 years ago to find a solution to the Syrian crisis. At that time was only one movement, Jabhat Nusra, linked to Al-Qaeda in Iraq. We were not ISIS, but we failed because there were some vetoes. And my last point, and I benefit from the presence of my colleagues from China to say that today we need, yes, China to be more active in the Security Council as far as the region. And thank you for your insight, for your ideas. We need China to be more proactive, and we need China to play a role. Because otherwise we see that today the Security Council is paralyzed. No solution are put forward, and there's always vetoes on when it comes to the solution for our question in the Middle East. So maybe, I don't know, how we should rethink. Maybe we should reshape the Security Council. Maybe we should rethink, yeah, maybe, but not the region. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes. Abdulaziz.
Well, being one of the Saudi who visited China early in November 1980, and my visit at that time was organized by Che's office in Beijing, I'd like to ask our Chinese friend, the perception we have about China here, it's a buyer and seller relation, has not moved really to a strategic relation in the Middle East. And what we have seen so far is China following the Russian in many of the issues. Do you really have an independent foreign policy when it comes to the Middle East that you specifically, I mean, we have seen your position in Syria, which, for us, it looks very strange and very weird, and also in some of the others. So I'd like you to verify that. Is there a Chinese foreign policy toward the Middle East independent from Russia?
Yes. I should say that we have our own foreign policy, especially to the Middle East. Sometimes we may have the same view that with the Russians, but actually that I think we also have some differences. I know that what you mean, that especially in Syria issue. For Syrian issue, I would like to introduce something. Why China vetoed that several times? A lot of people that say that because China consider his interest in the Middle East. So what is the interest for China in Syria? If we talk about energy, oil, everybody knows that we import that of half our import energy oil that from the Gulf country, especially Saudi Arabia. Compared with Syria, nothing at all. In recent years, the trade between China and Syria, almost nothing. So that this is not the question of interest. Then for what? Because we believe that there's very basic things. We believe strongly that domestic affairs should not be involved. This is the basic standard for the international law, also that for the UN Charter. So we hope that these issues should find solution that for their own people, the Syria, not so that not for Syria and other issues. We always respect certain country they made their choices, which government they choose, who's the leader that they choose. We will respect. So right now, everybody talk about the American election, Trump or Hillary. Actually, personally, I don't know that area of them, but we should respect because there's an American election. American people should make their decision, make their choice. So that in Syria issue, also that we believe we should respect the Syrian people's choice. And there's also a very important reason. Today, we have a lot of expert leaders in the region. Everybody knows we had very tough experience in past 30 years. There's the Iraq issue. There's Libya. We have too many lessons, very hard lessons. We should learn before the Iraq war. There's expert warn to those political leaders. After Iraq war, there will be a lot of problems, Shia Sunni problems, and Kurdish problems, and others, terrorists. So we should learn from that. Thank you.
Our time is very short, and Saeb Erekat has generously yielded the floor to the audience to ask questions, and I see a hand right here. If you could identify yourself and any affiliation. There's a microphone coming to you.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question from Youssef Amrani.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Sorry?
Could you identify yourself, please?
I'm Professor Suresh Kumar from Department of African Studies, India.
Thank you.
I have a question to Youssef Amrani. Sir, you have spoken about the Morocco role in the Arab world. Recently, Morocco has shown its willingness to join the African Union. So what are the parameters of Moroccan government to strengthen peace, security, and development in the North Africa region? Thank you very much.
Youssef, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, Morocco, I would say that for Morocco, Africa is one of the major priorities of foreign policy. So we have been working for Africa for a long time at the bilateral level. And we have a very unique approach towards our neighbors in Africa, or our partners in Africa. And I'm happy to see in the room Sheikh Tidiane Gadio, the former Senegal foreign minister, that for us, we need to build up a zone of shared prosperity in the region through common projects, and we are doing this. Morocco is working for peace and stability in Africa, and today Morocco is the major contributor as far as peace operations in Africa. For us, it's a priority. Joining the African Union, I think today the parameters are changing. Morocco will continue to play, as in the past, its role in Africa in solving conflicts, in promoting peace and stability, but there is an appeal from our partners that we should bring our contribution to the African Union. And last point, we will work, of course, with African Union, but also we give a great importance to the regional integration grouping. And in this sense, the experience in Africa in the regional groupings like ECOWAS, like CEDEAO, and so on, are very successful, not only as a tool for political dialogue and resolution of conflict, but also as a mean and a platform for economic cooperation. Because at the end of the day, what is important is how much wealth, how much growth do you create.
I feel the next panel breathing down our neck, but a question right here.
Si vous permettez, je voudrais revenir sur l'intervention de mon ami Moratinos.
Et votre nom, s'il vous plaît.
Fathallah Walalou, je suis un ancien ministre d'économie et de finances marocain. Je crois que vous avez raison, cher ami, de relever l'intérêt historique de 2017. Vous avez parlé du centenaire de la déclaration de Balfour. Il y a aussi 70 ans après la première guerre arabo-israélienne et la création d'Israël. Et il y a 50 ans après la guerre de 67 des 6 jours. Donc, malgré l'incertitude qui prédomine aujourd'hui, il est important, et vous l'avez dit, que les Européens prennent une initiative. C'est vrai que ce qui s'impose aujourd'hui, c'est lutter contre le terrorisme, lutter contre Daesh, faire tout pour ne pas qu'il y ait dislocation des entités nationales dans le monde arabe, la Syrie, l'Irak, la Libye par exemple. Mais en même temps, il faut donner espoir. Et on ne peut pas donner espoir si on ne revient pas à la mère des questions. Et la mère des questions, c'est la question palestinienne. Si on ne lit pas ce qui se passe aujourd'hui dans ce monde au fait qu'on est en train d'oublier la question palestinienne, c'est que vraiment, on est en train, à nouveau, de commettre une erreur importante d'analyse. Merci.
I take that as a comment rather than a question, so we'll move on to someone who also knows Washington very well. Ambassador Fujisaki. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for giving me the floor. I'm one of those who's rather concerned that image of Muslim Islam has been very much affected by so-called IS or ISIS or Islamic states. Isn't there thinking on Islamic State side, like Organization of Islamic States, asking world media not to call them IS or ISIS or Islamic states, because even though they themselves call it, because I think the word Islam and Muslim has been very much negatively affected by those groups, and that will remain so for a long time. I am very concerned about it. Thank you very much.
Saeb, that echoes something you were saying earlier. Could you briefly comment?
Well, with all due respect to Christianity and Judaism, the teachings of our Quran and the teachings of our Sunnah could be the basis for humanity as a whole, all aspects of life. And as I said, when we're supposed to go to mosques, we're supposed to go and worship God. And God created us and pledged to protect us. There are some thugs today, some criminals, who go to mosques and they tell us that God needs protection, so they take his role. And yes, I agree with you. It's not the Islamic countries, it's not the Islamic Conference, it's not the OIC. It's the Arab thinker, the Arab writer. Where are we? Where are the books showing the corruption of these people? And let's be very, very frank. I said that Arabs can no longer see with the eyes of their rulers, or hear through their ears, or speak through their tongues. Today, the world have changed on us. So either we use religion to maintain a certain order, or do we use the blindness, the lack of accountability, transparency, the rule of law, women's rights, human rights, educational systems, and so on, as a way to sustain the current regimes? It's a dilemma. And as I said, if we don't help ourselves, nobody else will. I don't think the mere fact that Islam is being used doesn't give the right to any Christian or any Jew to come and smear Islam. We're not perfect. Christians are not perfect. Jews are not perfect. But if some Jew or some Christian commit an act of crime, and many of them have committed this, we don't have a term calling it Jewish terrorism or Christian terrorism. It's this, if we were going to go back, why is the rise of the national right wing in the West coming? It could be that those thugs going to mosques to use God have succeeded. And as I said, I don't want to elaborate much on my short time on this, but this is our job as a whole. This is our job as Americans, Palestinians, Moroccans, Arabs, Jews. The question, how to defeat these forces of extremism. And this extremism, employment of religion, does not confine itself to mosques. There are those who go to churches to use God. And there are those who go to synagogues to use God. And this should stop.
I think we have time for two more questions. We'll take one here and then one here.
Michel Fouché from France. Question for Itamar Rabinovich. I think you are absolutely right to express the view that an internal view of the region should be built. One reason why I think it's historical one, external vision was hegemonic is, and we say that today in Syria, for example, that anytime you have a conflict, a divergence between political forces, they are immediately asking for support from outside. This is the case in Syria. It's a mess. So an internal problem is only becoming an international one. If we follow your view, is it wise always to wait for what will be decided in Washington? I'm not referring to Israeli-Palestinian, but in Syria, when the real position in Washington was expressed by President Obama, we don't have a dog in this fight. You don't have specific, important American national interests in Syria. So why don't we promote a regional solution, a first step between major regional power, Saudi Arabia, Iran first, Turkey, maybe Israel after? Why do we always wait for EU solution, Russian one, American one, when the reality is that regional power are more and more active supporting political forces fighting for power?
Itamar?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the answer to your question in the Syrian context is very clear, because it is a conflict fought on three levels: it's domestic, Syrian, it's regional, and it's international. And the regional is very, very stiff. I mean, for Iran, Syria is a major investment. The future of Hezbollah in Lebanon depends on the outcome in Syria. The Iranians are willing to go a very long way to keep Bashar al-Assad in power. Others have different views: Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, and it's very difficult to overcome these differences. So you have all these levels feeding one another.
Syria was mentioned, so brief intervention.
شكرا جزيلا. الحقيقة أنا أود أن أوضح. تحدث السيد xiaosheng ممثل الخاص للصين، وكذلك أتى سؤال حول موضوع التدخلات في سوريا. أولاً أود أن أقول لكم أنا يعني انشقيت عن نظام الأسد وأنا على رأس عملي رئيس وزراء سوريا في أغسطس 2012. ما حصل في سوريا مطالب للشعب السوري بالإصلاح السياسي والاقتصادي والاجتماعي من خلال مظاهرات سلمية تنادي بالإصلاح. جوبهت هذه المظاهرات السلمية التي خرج بها ملايين السوريين على امتداد الوطن السوري بمختلف مكونات الشعب السوري، السني والشيعي والمسيحي والدرزي والعلوي والكل. وعندما بدأت الثورة أنا كنت محافظ اللاذقية، وأول مظاهرة خرجت في مدينة اللاذقية في 25 آذار كان فيها من العلويين والمسيحيين والشيعة والسنة والجميع مشارك فيها. لم يكن هناك حرب أهلية أو كما يسموها الآن حرب أهلية ما بين السنة والشيعة، ولكن مجابهة النظام لهذه المظاهرات السلمية والمطالبة بالإصلاح بالحديد والنار هي التي دفعت السوريين للدفاع عن أنفسهم. ومشاركة إيران في الحرب كما ذكر السيد قبل قليل بحرسها الثوري الإيراني وميليشياتها الطائفية أجج الاحتقان الطائفي في المنطقة. التدخل في موضوع سوريا أرجو أن يوضح السيد المبعوث الخاص للصين هذه المعلومة تكون واضحة بذهنه. التدخلات بدأت من إيران عبر أدواتها في المنطقة وكذلك من روسيا. نحن نتمنى أن يكون هناك دور بارز للصين وأن يكون هناك الحقيقة حل سياسي للأزمة السورية، وأن يكون الدور الصيني مميز في هذه المسألة. التدخلات لم تكن من مطالب الشعب السوري، التدخلات الخارجية، بل النظام هو الذي استجلب هذه التدخلات من إيران ومن روسيا. وإيران بشكل خاص نتيجة أطماعها التوسعية في المنطقة فعلت أدواتها وأذرعها الطائفية التي أضرت في الأمن الإقليمي والأمن العالمي. والآن نتيجة هذه التدخلات الإيرانية نرى داعش والتطرف، ليس تطرف فقط من قبل التطرف السني، وإنما هناك تطرف شيعي وهناك تطرف مسيحي وهناك تطرف يهودي، هناك تطرف من كل الأشكال. التطرف والإرهاب يأتي نتيجة الممارسات الخاطئة من قبل الآخرين. أتمنى هذه المسألة تكون واضحة. ما حصل في سوريا هو ثورة ومطالب محققة للشعب السوري، ولكن التدخلات الخارجية من إيران وروسيا هي التي عقدت هذه المسألة بالشكل الذي نراه الآن. شكرا.
Thank you. The last word has been promised. It has to be very brief to the distinguished gentleman here. Can't hear you.
Does it work? Okay. Thank you, Jim. I have a question about Lebanon. I'm coming from Beirut. Et je vais parler en français.
But very brief.
Yes, in French. Au Liban, nous avons près de 2 millions de réfugiés syriens. Ce problème de réfugiés est une source d'instabilité. Ce n'est pas uniquement la guerre sur le territoire syrien ou les conflits dans la région qui sont des sources d'instabilité, mais le problème des réfugiés est une source d'instabilité qui s'étend jusqu'à l'Europe. Ma question est la suivante, M. Hijab. Est-ce qu'il ne peut pas y avoir en Syrie des régions sûres, en dehors des régions qui sont en conflit interne, des régions sûres qui peuvent être placées sous l'égide des Nations Unies pour accueillir les réfugiés syriens qui sont dans les pays limitrophes, ou du moins une grande partie de ces réfugiés? Ça, c'est une question.
Thank you. That's all we have time for, and I'm going to be a little bit of a maverick here. It's a great question about safe zones in Syria, and I'm going to ask Itamar to answer it.
I'm sorry. In theory, yes. One way to start resolving the issue is to have safe zones, to have no-fly zones. is a way of resolving the issue, except that those who want to perpetuate the war and the status quo will not allow that to happen. So, in short, it's a wonderful idea whose time has not come.
لو سمحت
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. The Israeli government wants to have the least profile in the Syrian crisis, and definitely would not object to that.